Welcome, everyone, to the Feminine Outliers podcast, your dose of fun, life advice, and experiences from two African professional women living and working in the Western world. We are your hosts, Cholwe Mandona
and Zelda Wasau,
and we are excited to have you here. So, for today, we are going to be discussing the 9 to 5, the JOB. And we're going to be looking into the pros and cons and having an objective discussion about it. And, with the way the world is opening up to new ways of working, the 9 to 5 is increasingly becoming an option for some, not for everyone, but it's increasingly becoming an option as to the way people would like to showcase their talent, their skills. And so it's something that we're going to look into and discuss how it's working for us, and and would like to learn more from you as well. But before we get started, of course, we're going to talk about what we are unlearning this week. So, Zell, what are you unlearning this week?
So this week, what I am unlearning is trying to do everything by yourself. I mean, let me rephrase that. Trying to, trying to figure out everything by yourself.
Mm,
Sometimes it's necessary to outsource things or pay for services of someone who is an expert on a certain subject to
mm-hmm,
actually help you out. I'm going to give an example. You know, I just recently paid for this course. It's a luxury travel course. I mean, they teach you credit card hacks to help you travel easier on like kind of like using points and miles and things like that. Now, I've been trying to obviously learn those things by myself and be like, oh, this is what you do. Oh, this is how I should do this. This is how it should go. But listening to like the free webinars I had before I signed up for the classes, and you realize there's certain things you have no clue about. Like it just
mm,
opens up your mind because, for example, they were like, oh, you could ask for a retention bonus when it's the year has ended and they're about to charge you your yearly fee on a credit card. You can ask them to give you a retention bonus. I would never have thought about that. So
mm.
this is when things like, did you know that?
No. Wow. Okay.
So that's why I'm realizing there's certain times it's okay to just pay the money to actually get a certain resource because it ends up helping you out in the long run. Because honestly, this is a whole new world that I don't know of, but I really am trying to learn more about because, for example, I said I want to travel more. It's the same thing that goes with. I'm going to give another example. I do have medical school loans, and I have been paying every quarterly for a certain, like, it's a financial company that was associated with my medical school to
Mm,
kind of help like supervise my loans. And must admit it's been amazing because there's certain things they teach me, and it's the plan they have that I would never have thought about doing that. Honestly, I would have been paying much more than I should have been paying,
mm,
or it would just have made my everything, like the payments, higher and all that. But because of them being on board and me paying that quarterly fee, it's actually helping. And so a lot of times we're like, oh no, I want to save money, so I don't want to pay for these professional services because I can figure it out by myself. But sometimes you may not be able to figure it out by yourself
mm-hmm,
because some of these things are not as obvious. And then also, if you're not able to figure it out by yourself, or if you might also end up paying more money in the long run by trying to figure
Mm,
it out by yourself, because you could have just paid the fee for the experts and then it ends up saving you much more money in the long run.
mm-hmm,
So I'm trying to unlearn that whole, oh, just do it by yourself. Obviously, there's things in which you can do by yourself. And obviously, I also encourage trying to learn as much as you can by yourself, so that when you're actually discussing with these people, you kind of have some form of background, and it kind of helps you have this knowledgeable conversation with them. But
mm-hmm.
sometimes it's necessary to actually just outsource these things.
Mm.
Yeah.
Nice. No, that's pretty cool. No, I didn't know that about that retention bonus.
Hmm.
Um and the thing that came to my mind when you were saying that was how in the past I probably would be thinking, "Oh, I want to save my money. I'm not going to pay someone to teach me something that, as you have mentioned, that I can learn on my own because, I'm smart. I've figured things out in the past, but not realizing that, um, as you just said it, you are just wasting more. You're wasting time that you could be using to improve your current skill set or learn a new fun skill. Um,
Hmm.
and there's no need to give yourself a burden or more things to learn just because you like to learn.
Right.
um and I think this is where a lot of people get it wrong. When, for example, like you being a doctor, maybe there's that expectation that, oh, because you're a doctor and you're smart, it means you should know all these things by the time you get out of residency. But the reality is that you actually didn't have time to learn these skills, like
Hmm.
financial based skills and stuff like that. You're now learning about them. And why not accelerate your learning? Why do you have to go at the same pace as if like somebody else who got out of college way earlier than you did? So it makes sense, actually. It does.
Hmm.
That's pretty cool. That's really cool. Actually, my unlearning is similar in some way if you think deeply about it. Um, I am unlearning that taking is better than receiving. I don't know if this is the best way to phrase this, but basically, what I am learning is that giving has ripple effects back to me than I ever would think. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm talking about the kind of giving that is it's like a posture, it's like an attitude. Not the giving like donating to a charity, um which is what I grew up learning about giving. Like you give to the people who have less than you, which makes sense. I think it's a good act, something to embrace in one's life, just to have that humility and be grateful for the fact that you can actually give, whether it's money or things or your time. But I also mean just in general, like having a posture to give where it could be, for example, like hosting people for a dinner at your house if you can. And to you, it might just be like, oh, I'm hosting this dinner and my friends are coming over and it's a lot of work. But then that dinner becomes a really special time, like a good memory that you have with friends or if it's family. And people will always go back to that time. But also, um, like people will just find you to be more pleasant as a giver, as somebody who has this giving attitude. I've come to realize that there are some things I've done in the past, and I didn't even think about it like as much. Like I just had good intentions, And people remember, like, people will be like, do you remember the time when you did this for me? Or like, or sometimes they will not tell me what I had done, but I always wonder why sometimes people will go out of their way to continue to help me or serve me even when I didn't ask for it. um but I've realized that giving really has got ripple effects that I'm not even aware of it, and they come back not necessarily at the same time, but later on as well. So yeah.
It took me a double take to actually get what you were saying, because I was like, you said you were unlearning that taking is better than giving. So in my head, I was
Yeah.
like, OMG. So she thinks taking is better than giving. And then it took me a while to
Oh,
realize
yeah.
that
I was trying.
you're saying that, in other words, saying that giving is better than
Take
taking.
it. Yeah.
Sorry. It took me,
Yeah.
my brain took a couple of seconds to catch up, to catch that. Because I was like, huh? Oh my goodness.
Mm.
Um,
Uh,
but, yeah, I mean, it's always, as they say, giving is better than receiving. I guess there's a beauty, as you said, in giving. And I mean, it also helps. I guess it helps you feel good, but it also, I think the fact that it's a blessing to others is also very important.
mm-hmm.
And there are people who really love to give. I admire them. um, because I'm not, I mean, I feel like I'm more on there's a balance with giving and receiving or taking.
Mm.
I definitely feel like it's good to give, but also how you give, who you give, the heart with which you give. I feel like it all matters. Because if you're just giving because
Yes.
you feel like that's what society makes things I should because I have the capability of doing it. Uh, mm, I don't really know if that's
Mm-hmm.
if that's the best way to do so. I mean, if you have a heart for it, I think that's so important in general. Um, but it's important, I think, in general, for us to be able to just also give with just, I guess, with a pure heart and just be okay with giving people things
Mm-hmm.
without expecting anything in return.
Correct.
Um,
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
think that's so important. Like, they should definitely be some part of that in our lives, in which you give but don't expect anything in return and just be happy. I think that's an important skill to learn, because all the time, if you think about giving and you're expecting something in return, I mean, then why are you giving? I mean,
Exactly.
there's definitely uh part for that, for giving and expecting something in return in certain aspects. Of course, if you give, you need to get something in return. For example, if you're working, you need to get paid back in return, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But in this context of us giving, we're thinking about like charity or just helping people out. Sometimes it's just really nice to do it. I think it's a human, like, just something that really brings out our humanity, is
Mm-hmm.
us just being able to give. It's one of the things I always wanted to do, in the sense that I want to, I mean, for sure, I feel like if there's a way I can bless some people somewhere on this earth, it'll be helpful. I feel like that's something I'm definitely looking into. Most likely it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
back home in Kenya, because that's where I feel like, I can make my little difference.
Mm.
But yeah, no, it was funny because my brain was like, "What is she saying?" And I was
Oh yeah.
like,
It is a
then I was like, "Oh
twister.
yeah, yeah." Then I was like, "Oh
Yeah.
yeah, no, no." She's basically saying giving is, better than taking. But I mean, there is a room for there's room for both. I feel like it shouldn't be give, 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 and not get anything back. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you also need to be blessed by others. I feel like if
Exactly.
you're a giver, you're more likely, as you said, to be blessed by others, to get stuff, randomly done for you. But
Mm-hmm.
it's I think a key word, which is a really key word in general for my life, is balance. There needs to be both.
Exactly. 100%. And I think you cracked the code when you said when you give without the expectation of of getting something in return, and that's context obviously dependent. I think that's where it's sometimes very surprising when you receive something back and you're like, oh, I didn't really need that, but thank you. And it's actually just a very overwhelming experience to be like, oh wow, I really do feel appreciated. So yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you.
Mhm.
So all right, so now moving on to the topic of today, the pros and cons of a 9 to 5. So, Zell, we are in the professional world. You being a medical doctor, me being an engineer, and the way our work is structured is,
Mhm.
I guess, resemblance of a 9 to 5. I know yours is a little bit different because you have 1 week when you're working and then you have 1 week when you're off. But the days that you're working from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., right?
Correct.
Yeah. So, and for me, it's also it's similar in that I always start my work in the morning, so let's say around 9, and get done by 5 p.m. So I just thought it would be um, great to discuss what are the joys that we get from our work, based, I guess, based on the way it's structured, and what are the limitations of this work structure. Um, yeah, because they obviously are new alternatives coming up as to how people, uh, work. And of course, after the pandemic, working from home has been introduced for those people that can actually do so. So, but why not talk about the traditional 9 to 5? So, Zell, what would you say that, speaking of pros about working a 9 to 5?
Hmm. I would say you learn how to work with other people.
Mm, that's a good one.
I feel like, in this world, you can't avoid working with other people, interacting with other people. And I feel like it's a skill that I think is really important for people to have. You need to learn how to work with other people, how to be a team player. And a regular 9 to 5, I think, really helps you with that in different aspects. Of course, people's 9 to 5 jobs are different. But I feel like
Mm,
a lot of us will have some aspect of working with other people in that 9 to 5. And it gives you those good, important skills on how learning how to work with it, because it's a skill. It's definitely a skill. Because if you don't have that people skill, it really could be detrimental for you, in one way or the other. You know, you have to learn how to handle the different personalities at work. How do the different personalities interact with your personality? How do you come off of, as well? Because that also affects, how you relate with your colleagues. Um, and how do you handle conflict at work and all that? It's all those are people skills that you learn with a regular 9 to 5. Now you can still have it on you know, in a more non-traditional work setting.
mm,
But I feel like 9 to 5 jobs tend to do it really well because a lot of times you're part of a group or a team or something, and so you all have to kind of like pitch in. So yeah, I think that's one of the first pros I can think of when it comes to
mm,
working a regular 9 to 5 job.
yeah, that's a very good one. It actually didn't pop up until you said it. And I was just wondering that because with the 9 to 5, you if you're doing like a 5 days in a week, and let's say there's a person like a coworker that's you consider difficult, or you just don't get along with them, or their personality is different from yours, there's always each day either reminds you about how difficult they are, or or it could become a new day about how to interact with them and how to
Right.
not to be bothered by them, or to find what they like, or I don't know, but just to navigate the workplace and your coworkers in a way that is, I guess, doable or workable for both people involved. Because I have encountered or been in conversations where people will say, "Oh, I don't get along with this person at work, and every time I see them, it makes me mad." But then, I guess that's room to learn how to deal with a difficult person or a person you don't get along with, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
just as opposed to just saying, "Oh, I'm going to quit," unless obviously it's a very toxic environment and it's really
Right.
necessary that you quit. So, that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah.
Um, for me, when I think of a pro to a 9 to 5, is that it allows you to build on your skills if it's something that you actually want to build. And
Mm-hmm.
if it's, um, I don't know, if the skill that you're working on is something that can be built, because sometimes there are some tasks that are just they just it's just a task. It's not that you get any better.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a skill, and of course I can speak for myself when it comes to engineering. um, the more you experience different projects and working with different people, you get better at problem solving, and you just, your my toolbox continues to expand. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that just comes from time, doing something time and time again. And so I don't know any, if I, for example, did my work just, let's say, once a day and then got back to it after a week or two, I probably would not be as, I don't know what the word is, as skillful, because my exposure is less. So it actually helps to do what I'm doing on a daily basis, or rather on a more consistent basis.
Mm. That's a that the I think the point you made um can work both ways. I mean, in the sense
Mm,
that it can work with a 9 to 5, but it can also work with a non-traditional job setting. Because which I think
mm,
whichever job you work in, you can increase your skills. But definitely, the skill sets I think might be slightly different. But I
mm,
assume whatever job you're working will require different skill sets, and so whatever work environment you're in will probably uh, somewhat, I mean, enhance your skills because you have to learn certain things to do the job. But I still feel like being a 9 to 5 job, I feel like there's also certain skill sets that are really, you know, that might actually better come out when you're doing a 9 to 5. Um,
mm,
maybe. Because that's a tough one. I mean, the comment you made is a bit of a tough one because I can see it working
mm,
both ways. I can see also in a non-traditional job you getting the the skill sets, but that could also work with what I said earlier. Think about it. You still have to work
mm.
with people in a non-traditional, depending on what you're doing. But yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean,
Yeah.
there's certain things you can get, and I think in a traditional 9 to 5 job, they tend to have a lot more like team building things or workshops to improve your skills related to the job, and so that's really helpful because it helps you gain experience and skills in you know your aspect of work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
that's a good
Um,
one.
I was actually, as you just said it, the other thing that I thought about was that you get an instant network. Um,
Mm,
because, for example,
that's
you just,
true.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just graduated from residency, and imagine if you, let's say, decided to start your own private practice right away, you would have to go out there and make connections and meet people, or at least do some networking. But once you started work, you're just instantaneously exposed to all the other doctors you're working with, the nurses, just instantly. And
Mm-hmm.
there's almost that like instantaneous credibility that you are given without even like pitching it or asking for it. Because as soon as, for example, as soon as you walk in, I don't know if you have a badge. I have an ID badge. So it's like there's already that thing of no one is gonna stop me in the building and say, "Who are you? Why are you coming into this building? Who are you going to see?" So there's just an instantaneous like acceptance, social acceptance. Um, and I even, it's funny because sometimes, I remember one time I was really dressed up. I think I had an event somewhere, or maybe it's just me, but I was dressed up and I walked into a store. I can't remember, maybe it was also a restaurant, and the person who was working there was just like, "Ma'am," and I was just like, "Why is he calling me ma'am? I'm young. Like, why are you calling me ma'am?" But then at the same time, I looked at how I dressed, and the person just gave me this like sense of like respect of like, yeah. I was like, okay, I'll take it. um but yeah, there's just, maybe there's something, I guess what that my point is that you gain instantaneous network and credibility uh without putting much effort right in the beginning, I guess.
Your story. How does your story network into that? I'm just trying to think. Like,
I don't
because
know,
yeah,
I just brought it up just to showcase my fashion skills
because I'm
in
like
case.
that might have nothing to do with the networking. It's just you dress up and you're being treated how you dress up.
Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah, maybe that you're right. You're right. Um anyway, I have some fashion skills, all right, that I'm called ma'am. Just saying. But yeah, I don't know.
Lol.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's true. You do get the sort of networking, valuable networking you get through that. Be it from like your colleagues going on conferences, group trips, and things like that. That you're able to meet new people. I think it's a 9 to 5 job is a good way of getting that because it's a more, I guess, controlled environment in that sense, and so they have these like sessions they put on for you. So it's definitely good for networking, um, as you said, and just getting to meet other people who are maybe in similar work fields or even a different work field that maybe you might be working with in one capacity or the other. But yeah, no, I definitely see that happening. Um, I have uh, a pro that again it's an interesting one
Mm,
depending on how you look at it. But 9 to 5 kind of gives you a structure in your life.
mm,
So I
yeah.
kind of like you know when you're on work, when you're working, when you're off, so you can easily schedule things you want to do, be it time to go to the gym, if you want to meet your friends, if you want to go shopping or whatever you want to do, you're able to actually kind of able to squeeze it in or plan it in because you know your schedule, and then it's like
Hmm.
you work and then you're done. I feel
Mhm.
like people who have non-traditional jobs, particularly like entrepreneurs and stuff, a lot of them don't have regular, like, just 9 to 5 hours work hours. I mean, some of them are do stipulate for themselves these work hours, and they stay within the limits. But a lot of times when people are starting out, and a lot of them, they just work, and it's very like, the work hours are very flexible, and so it can be a bit
Mhm.
hard to actually schedule. You don't have a routine. It's hard to create a routine because you don't have
Mm.
as much structure with the that comes with the 9 to 5. So,
Mhm.
you know things that require a routine, or that are helpful with a routine, become harder to do with a non-regular one. But with the 9 to 5, because I'm on work at this time, I'm off work at this time, you can actually build a routine for yourself around that. I think that's very helpful. It's something that I think about because, uh, in a sense, I feel like I fall in the middle, because
Mm.
I do have like my work hours, but then my
Yeah.
work hours are also not traditional, quote unquote, work hours.
Mhm.
Um, and you know, and because I work 12 hours a day, it means sometimes creating a routine is hard, because some of the things you do them within the regular. You do them sometime between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., but you can't do it. But afterwards, it's harder. Most people don't do it, or things like that. So I feel like I fall somewhere in the middle, because I know when
Mhm.
I'm working, but then it's also hard to create these routines. I feel like a regular 9 to 5 job is easier, because if you finish work at 5, you still have some couple of hours. There's a difference between finishing work at 5 and 7 p.m. You know,
Mhm.
5 p.m. you can still go to the gym, and you don't feel like it's too late or anything like that. So I feel like it's definitely, I think, an advantage of just being able to have that structure and build a routine. Now, this can be a double-edged sword, and I'm sure we'll talk about it when we get to the
Mm.
disadvantages of having a 9 to 5. But
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like it definitely helps, and obviously you have to be someone who's, I guess, somewhat organized, because
Mm.
you can have a nine
Yeah.
to five job, but if you don't actually organize your life, or if you're not disciplined enough, you might not actually create a routine, even though you have the opportunity to do so.
No, that's a good one. And I just realized we have been talking about the pros, and the one pro that we didn't start off with, which I'm sure some people would think that would be the first thing on my mind when I think of why am I in a 9 to 5, is it's a source of income. This is
Right.
what this is like our fifth pro, and we're like, oh yes, and it is a source of income. um and it kind of goes to show, as we were talking, that I hope people are realizing that there is more to a 9 to 5 than just the income, because I feel like sometimes people might say, okay, I'm going to get this job so that I'm just waiting at the end of the month or whenever you get paid, um, and that's the most exciting part of the job, not realizing that there are these other resources and opportunities that you can get out of the 9 to 5. But going back
Hmm.
to the fifth pro is that it is a source of income, and it's I want to say that it's been a traditional way of working. So
Hmm.
for a lot of people, it is the main income. It's the way people that acquire their money to spend on themselves, their family, and in their community. So it's something that's just been there for so long, and just something to acknowledge that it's a way that people actually uh, survive.
Mm. I will add on to that.
Mm,
Um, I guess it's a regular source of income.
yeah.
Uh, because I mean, there's multiple sources of income out there. I think a 9 to 5, because most of them tend to be salaried or something. So you kind of
Hmm.
know. This is when I'm going to have my paycheck. This is when it's going to come in. So it's more so a regular source of income. Whereas a non-traditional job, it can be a bit more varied.
Mm-hmm.
But a 9 to 5, you tend to have a regular source of income. That's why some people don't like leaving it, because you're leaving the certainty of having that paycheck come in when it's supposed to come in.
Mm-hmm.
um and that definitely gives of some form of security, for sure. I don't know if it ultimately ends up being false security, if I'm thinking about it in the
Mm,
long run. But it definitely gives you some form of security, that financial security, knowing that for sure this is when my paycheck's going to come in.
mm. No, I can relate to that. And it makes me question. I have this in my mind, that I don't know if it's a pro or con, is that we when you work for a 9 to 5, the administrative aspects of the job are taken care of by your employer. So you're not having to think about, like a retirement fund. At least it's an option. um, and then you're not having to think about your taxes. The taxes are probably deducted. I know it varies, but I think what I'm trying to say is that the parts where you have to interact with the government, Uncle Sam, part of that is taken care of in a way, even though you still have to be involved in it in terms of like the decisions that you make around it, especially if some of the employer benefits are optional. You still have to make the decision which way you're going to go about opting in or opting out. So I don't know if that's a pro, but it's it it probably helps instead of dealing with so much paperwork and having to hire your own, I don't know, accountant, or
Mm-hmm.
lawyer. So maybe those fees are not. You don't have to take into account those fees in some cases, at least.
I like it. I like how you qualified it in some cases.
In some cases, yeah,
uh, oh, that's true. I mean, that's actually a very valid point. You don't have to think about the administration aspect of some of these things, which, let's be real, can be a pain.
it is.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
I definitely agree with that. I don't even have much to add to that. It's just factual when at least you have that aspect dealt with. But yeah, I don't have any
yeah.
more pros. I don't know if you have any more. I have some cons that I can think of.
All right, let's get right into it. No, I do not have any more pros. So, all right, what's your first con?
It kind of feels like your life is not your own. Like it's
Mm,
kind of, it's structured for you. So you have to do things, you have to work around your schedule.
mm,
That this can be an issue when it comes to things like, if you have um, family events to go to, vacations to plan, and all that. You have to book it around when you have vacation. If you have vacation, I mean, you should have vacation days, but if you have vacation
mm,
days, paid time off, and all that, you have to book it around that based on the stipulations in your contracts and what they say. So it kind of
mm-hmm.
feels like your time is like you don't have that control over it. It's not your time is not your own per se. Like you have to give them the time that is required, and then to get your free time, it's you know becomes a whole other issue sometimes. I mean, some people they work in places that it's so easy to get their time off or the vacation as they want to. But I think for a lot of us, it takes quite a bit of planning, and you have to plan around the work schedule. Not it's not the other way around. Which ideally, I would rather it be the
The
other way
other
around.
way.
Yeah, like I would like my
Yeah.
work to be planned around my schedule, my vacations, and my everything. Oh my goodness. If
Mm-hmm.
wishes were horses, beggars would definitely ride. But like,
Yeah.
what am I supposed to do? Like, that's an issue. That's something
Yeah.
I felt like in my workplace because um I have to like plan in advance, like, oh, this is what I want to do for this and that. And then if you're working, you have to figure out a way to find coverage, or if you have to ask for paid time leave off. And it's just such a hustle. So, yeah.
Mm, yeah.
And
No,
I feel
I.
like for non traditional people, they have a little bit more leeway because they tend to have more control over their schedule. So it's
Mm-hmm.
a little bit easier for them to kind of plan things around it because they have more control over it.
That's true. I agree. It's yeah, and it's that thing where you're somewhat forced to make things work when you do plan for that vacation, right? Or
Hmm.
whatever plans that you have outside work. And I actually sometimes get anxiety, like when for if let's say I've decided to take some time off, and in my mind it has been agreed actually with my employer as well, like, okay, I'm gonna be taking this time off, and I'm not certain like what could happen that time. Like there's still a lot of uncertainty in the world. What
Mm.
if my flight gets canceled? What if I fall sick during that time? So like part of me just prays like, oh my goodness, I hope everything just goes well, because if I have to make changes to my you know vacation, then things again have to be rearranged, as you said. And
Hmm.
if you had told somebody like, okay, you're going to cover me for this amount of time, and then going back to them and saying, no, I actually will just work, it's okay. Sometimes it's easy, but then sometimes it just throws things off
Hmm.
in every way, and you're like, oh my goodness, why? So that can be very frustrating, having that fixed time to take time off, I guess. um
Right.
yeah.
And with the whole fixed time thing, something that falls into that as well is in general, because your time is not your own, it's you have to carve out time for yourself to do things or work on things that are passionate for you, like your own little projects, if you may call
Mm-hmm.
them. Because
Yeah.
your time is based off what they say. And so now based off the remainder time, it's like, okay, so now I need to work out, play with my kids, go to work, go to church, go to the mosque, go to, you know, here and there, plan vacation. Oh yeah, then I'm working on a podcast. I need to do the podcast. Oh, I'm working
Yeah,
on, you know, like setting up this business. I have set up this business, but this all has to be in your off time. It can be
exactly.
rather limiting.
It is. It can be very limiting. And if you are literally on a like 9 to 5, like starting work around 9 and then leaving work around 5, that means every day during the week, you literally have only 4 hours, let's say to get that stuff done, just to get some stuff done, before you have to go to bed, especially if you are someone like me who has fallen in love with going to bed early. You only have so much time. So now you have to be very specific and very clear about how you want to spend your evening, um, just so that you can get the things that you have on your list done. So it can be, yeah, it can be limiting like that. Okay.
Uh, Do you have
So
one?
yeah, I'm thinking. I guess it's funny. I just mentioned that in terms of the limitation of time after work. Um, I this is gonna be. I don't know how to say this. I'm just gonna say it the way I'm thinking about. The con is that it's the reverse of building up your skills. If you're not in a job that you're actually building a skill or it's
Hmm.
somewhat progressing you, it's actually wasting your time. Uh,
That was my con too. I was gonna say sometimes it can stunt your growth.
yeah, like significantly. And especially if it's where I don't know, like it, and it's very tempting because as you said, the nine
Hmm.
to five provides that regular income, so there is this false sense of security, and there could be also this false sense of progression.
Hmm.
Because if someone looked at you and said, "Oh, this person is doing this, and they work at this company," um, I mean, even for people that are professionals. There are people that are right now in nine to fives. They got the education, but it's not something they're passionate about at all. They don't even want to be in that space. They maybe, they grew up being told they should be this kind of person. They should be an accountant. They should be a lawyer. They should be a doctor, and they really want to do art, or they want to do music, or they want to do something else. And but in their minds, that regularity of a job, an income, is actually stunting their progression in what they actually want to do. So um, it can actually be a distraction more than some benefit to keep building your skills, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I like how you said the word distraction because I mean that can definitely play into it because you're too busy. Again, you're too busy working on someone else's goals
Mm,
because you're employed that you can't. You're not working on your own goals. And
mm,
that could be partially because you don't have the time or because your time's dictated by them and so you don't even have time to work on your own goals, which is so important to work on your own goals as well. You can't just be working and working for others and not trying to progress yourself in one way or the other. So that's one aspect of it, um, stunting your growth as like as that's how I was putting it.
mm,
But another thing you don't think about is sometimes you just reach a point in which there's kind of like a glass ceiling in the
mm,
sense that like you kind of reached your the maximum of your your growth or your ability in the company. And
mm-hmm,
with that false sense of security, sometimes you might just feel like, oh, I'm comfortable, there's no need for me to learn a new skill or to try a new job or to try a new something, and you just get so comfortable that you don't go out of your comfort zone and you don't grow further. And
mm,
maybe sometimes you actually need to get out of that 9 to 5. It might mean going to another 9 to 5, which is fine. But
mm-hmm,
sometimes with that false sense of security, it just stunts your growth because you don't either that you no longer have opportunities, which happens. Sometimes you don't have more opportunities for that. So you just end up stunted. Or you have this
mm-hmm,
false sense of security that's making you feel like, oh, I'm good, I've made it. And so you end up not actually digging in deeper, learning, trying to learn new skills, learn new valuable lessons, whatever. It doesn't have to be skills, but just ways of doing different things, or just learning up or reading up on things that will help you progress further, just because you have this false sense of security. And
mm-hmm,
that's like another way that that could, pop up. And so I feel like it's such a big thing because I see it and I also see it in like some of my fellow physicians in which I mean nowadays there's a lot of physicians who are out here like, oh my goodness, I have to make money outside of medicine as well. And I think the reason why there's this movement is because medicine is hard work. It's real hard work. So a
mm,
lot of physicians are getting to the point of I also want to make money but not but work half as hard as I have to do when I'm actually working.
Mm.
And so, but you find that there's groups of physicians who are, again, because we don't get taught anything about finances in medical school for the most part, they
Mm-hmm.
are just comfortable there. And they don't even think
Mm.
about, oh, I can do a lot more with my money. I can set up business. I can do this. They're just comfortable because, again, you have that false sense of security that you just don't feel like moving.
Mm. I see. No, that's true, and it's like there's a need to distinguish productivity versus busyness.
Mm,
Um, and
that's a good one.
yeah, and people tend to lean, if you're not proactive and you're not looking at your work deeply, you tend to you tend to be given this illusion that you're being productive because you went to work. And and even I do this sometimes, where you ask someone, "Oh, how was your day?" "Oh, it's been so busy." And it's like, okay, if it's been busy because you're learning a new skill, you are trying, you're working to be promoted and do a different job, then very good. But if you're telling me it's been busy because you've just been running around, just trying to fill up your time, and maybe because you're being asked to, or but you know that deep down you know that it's not helping you progress, or you know that you could be doing something more or better, then that's just busyness, um and so just it yeah, that illusion can be created in a 9 to 5, so something to be aware of.
It can be created very easily. I feel like it's just the perfect environment. And I feel like um, these corporations and stuff who, when they hire you, like they also know, you know, quote unquote, how to get away with stuff or how to do this. For example, they tell you, oh, for you're gonna get bonuses, but these are the criteria for getting the bonuses. And you look at the criteria for getting bonuses, it's basically helps the company be, I guess, maybe more productive, or productivity to go up or whatever. Somehow it benefits the company, but it requires
Mhm.
more hard work on you. Sometimes you ever stop and think, is this too much work for me to just get this amount of bonus? Like, is it actually worth it? Because
Good
they
question.
basically sugarcoat things and they say like, oh my goodness, this is what's going to happen and blah blah blah. But you really need to step back and think. A lot of times they only say stuff that's actually going to benefit them. They make it seem
Mhm.
like, so they'll give you a little benefit because they realize you're human and you have to give them an incentive to somewhat do better or work harder. But ultimately
Mhm.
speaking, it's the company who's getting the most out of it.
Mhm.
And you might not realize it, but they're really good at putting it in a way that you don't realize it. It's as if it's like a
Mm.
wolf covered in sheep's
Can
clothing.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you can't see it. Like if you unless you look closely, you probably realize something's up, and it's really good. Like basically, I feel like 9 to 5s are really good at doing that because they kind of just take the thinking out of you. And
Yes.
in some
Yes.
aspects, it's good for the thinking taking out of you. For example, administrative stuff and all that. But sometimes it's so bad that you just don't think for yourself and you're just like, oh, the company says this, they say do
Mhm.
this, do that. And you don't realize that you don't stop to second guess and be like, is this actually worth it for me to do? Like, do I have to
Mhm.
work this extra hard to get this bonus? Does it actually make sense? Can I actually make this amount of bonus elsewhere by doing something else but working less time? People need
Mm.
to stop to think. And I feel like 9 to 5s, they work really well with people who just don't question the system. Because
Yeah.
if you question the system, OMG, you're going to be like, why is this? Why is this like that? Why are we doing
Yeah.
this? Why are we doing that? I don't know. I
Yeah.
feel like that's how it ends up being. And you end up just being like low key mad how
Mhm.
things go because you're just like, why is this happening like this?
Exactly. And just with what you're saying is, and even when you want to do that investigation and you want to think for yourself, you get home, you're tired, and you've only got like 3 hours left. You just
Mm-hmm.
spent an hour cooking dinner, and then you have 3 hours. So then you ask yourself, between watching TV, relaxing, and finding out about, what's going on in the world outside my job, that motivation gets lost. So it just
Mm-hmm.
then becomes this never ending cycle. And as you said, your thinking abilities just keep going down because you're never really thinking about it until something really big happens and you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't see this coming. But it's also because,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have the time and the energy to be proactive because you're just trying to recover from a long day of work. So,
Mm-hmm.
wow. Wow.
Right. I just thought about that and I'm like, oh my
Oh,
goodness.
that's
I mean,
no
this is
that.
why some people want to become like entrepreneurs and stuff like that because you feel stifled sometimes in these 9 to 5 jobs, you know? You feel
Mm,
like I can't break out, I can't break free, or I can't do things my way or a way that benefits me because again, you're doing stuff based off what someone else wants you to do and based off what's going to work for the company, what's going to benefit the company, and that's not always in your best interests. I feel like a lot of times it's not in your best interest, but they try to make it seem like it's in your best interest.
no, exactly. And also, just to add one more thing is that the 9 to 5 doesn't incorporate different personalities and different ways of thinking. It sort
Mm,
of breeds the same type of thinking. And
mm-hmm,
I believe I read an article. I don't remember what the title was, but it was just around how the 9 to 5 is better suited for like an extrovert than an introvert, for example.
mm,
Especially if it's like the corporate kind of 9 to 5. Um,
mm-hmm.
but that doesn't surprise me if that was the outcome of the research, because as an extrovert, it's like I'm going to more people, so these are my people, and you just can easily blend in and and just associate yourself with whoever is at work at the workplace. Um, but I'm sure for an introvert, there's maybe more effort to be in the office to make new
Mm.
connections and things like that. So it's not always comfortable for everyone, and it can be a struggle for some and easier for others.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, and I think it also depends on what type of 9 to 5 it is. Because, I mean, there are certain jobs that are more built or geared towards people who are introverted. Um, but in general, I feel like, I mean, I'm not sure how it is in the UK exactly, but I feel like in America, for example, it's kind of like an extrovert world. Like the default is more so to lean into extroversion than introversion.
Mm,
So, I mean, yeah, it can become an issue, with different personalities. Like, I'm pretty sure different types of jobs require different types of personality kind of traits, or certain types
mm-hmm,
of personality traits work better with certain jobs. And if you happen to not fall into that category of personality that this job will gel well with you, you may
mm-hmm.
struggle. You may
Yeah.
definitely struggle. And again, because 9 to 5s tend to be a little bit more rigid and less and more fixed because they already have like the policies in place and things that rules and regulations that they follow, and you kind of have to fall into place with those. Again, you're living life on their terms, not on your terms.
Mm,
So yeah, yeah, but
yeah.
I think that's pretty much that's all I had to say about the pros and the cons of 9 to 5s. I can't think of anything right now that I have left to
Yeah.
say off the top of my head. I'm sure there'll be something in the future, but yeah.
Yeah, no, this has been great. I know. I feel like I hope we have have had a well balanced take on this, both on the pros and the cons, and just opened people up to yeah, like to have a think about their 9 to 5 experience. And so we would love to get your feedback on what are the pros and cons of your 9 to 5, if you are in a 9 to 5, or just in general. We would love to hear from you guys. And please give us your feedback at the feminine outliers at gmail.com, and listen to our podcasts
Mhm.
on all the major platforms, and also on the other smaller platforms. We are on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts. If you like what we are talking about and what we're saying, please like and subscribe. Um,
Mhm.
the more feedback, the better, and we can also uh, bring more content that you guys are interested in. Um, and also, I would like to announce that we have an Instagram page, um, which is very
Yes.
exciting. And we will be posting on Instagram, just reminding you about what we're talking about
Mhm.
on these episodes. So this is really exciting for us as we continue to expand. So until next time, have fun, live large, and don't be afraid to be an outlier.
Have a good rest of your week.
Thanks, guys. Bye.